You're listening to Owning the Buy Box, an IP Secure podcast. This is the podcast for agencies, brands, and aggregators who want to master Amazon, push out unauthorized competition, and take their business to the next level. You're about to hear a conversation that'll help you maximize your growth on Amazon by owning the Buy Box. Let's get into the show.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Owning the Buy Box. I am your host, Dave Cooper. I'm also the founder and CEO of IP Secure, and it's 2023 now, and very excited for our guest today. We get an opportunity here on the show to talk to really successful sellers on Amazon, and today in particular, I'm super excited about our guest and his story. And frankly, his organization and the value that they provide. And that's Ethan McAfee. And Ethan is the founder and executive chairman of Amify. Ethan, thanks for being here.
Yeah, Dave, thanks so much. It's nice to talk to you today.
I really appreciate you being on. I like to use this platform as a way to really feature people and organizations that have found success on Amazon. You know, it's a difficult, complex environment, right, to be successful. And so I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I think in a little bit of the research that we did, I read something about you starting really the business, I think around 2011, and it was somewhat of something of a side hustle for you, right? Initially, is that true?
Yeah, no, absolutely true. So, my life, I always say I've had two careers. So I graduated college in 1998, right when Amazon was, mostly selling books and CDs, and I was actually an investment analyst covering the internet sector for large mutual funds and hedge funds for the first 11 years of my life. And I really saw Amazon go from, a small little, unprofitable books and CD company to really starting to become the everything store. And so in 2010, 2011, I started what became Amify. And it was really meant to be like a fun side hustle. I realized, a decade ago, something was going on there and I just needed to start. My somewhat silly claim to fame was I was the first person selling pickleball paddles on Amazon in 2010, 2011, and in a serious fashion. And that was right before pickleball became what it is today as one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. But yeah, no, I started it in my townhouse in Arlington, Virginia. I would buy pickleball paddles from the manufacturers that made pickleball. They would ship them to my parking spot out front of my townhouse, and we'd list them for sale on Amazon. And I did that for about 9 months or so, and then I get this nasty letter from our homeowners association saying that you can't run a business out of your townhouse. And I guess for some reason my neighbors were getting upset that we were getting pallets of pickleball paddles delivered.
Right.
But that was like an important moment because it made me wake up and realize that, hey, this is a real business and I should take it seriously rather than just like a little side hustle. So that was 2011, quite a while ago, and Amazon's certainly come a long way since then.
Yeah, and I think you picked the right sport, like you said. I mean, it was kind of in its infancy, and you rode the pickle wave a little bit, I guess, right? Because it's pretty popular today.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, it was just like beginner's luck. In reality, I said to myself, hey, I want to start a business selling products on Amazon. I just need a product to start. My parents played pickleball down in Florida, and they said they could never find the equipment. And so I said, well, why don't we start with this? And then, I think as an entrepreneur, one of the most important things is you just need to start somewhere, right? And what started selling as pickleball paddles then became selling, tennis rackets and sunglasses and tennis shoes, and then became a retailer, and then became what we are now as a service provider for brands on Amazon.
I mean, and obviously many years later now, I think I read, and I don't know how recent that the article was that I looked at, but that the company is moving about somewhere 110, 120 million a year worth of product through the Amazon platform, and I would assume you're working with a lot of brands.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think this year that number is probably about a year old or so. This year we'll sell significantly over $200 million on behalf of our brand
Wow.
partners. And we really focus on one thing, and that's helping your larger, more established direct to consumer brand sell on what we call direct to consumer on Amazon 3P. And so, the old model, we always say like the old business model was brand makes product, sells it to retailer sells it on Amazon or in the brick and mortar stores. And that made
Hmm.
sense kind of in the days before internet. But now that internet has come along, a lot of brands need to, we think, own their internet channel, and they need to think of Amazon much more as an extension of their website rather than a retailer. And so that we work with brands who want to create their own Amazon seller account, who want to manage it and grow it, and they also realize that they don't have the in-house expertise to maximize it. And so they would hire us to basically become their outsourced. We always say chief Amazon officer.
That's an interesting topic because there's a lot of guests on the show, and some people advocate for, being vendor central, leaning on Amazon. Some advocate, for being in seller central and sort of managing, your own destiny. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on maybe the pros and cons of those two approaches.
Yeah. So for us, the goal really was is that Amazon's a $800 billion marketplace, and that each brand has different needs and requirements. So, like, how big is your brand? How much revenue is your brand doing? What's the average price point? And so that we really feel that there's a lot of brands that should be on Amazon 1P, and that there's a lot of brands that should be selling direct on Amazon 3P, and there's also brands that should be using retailers on 3P. But the market is so big, and so that one one size fits all policy doesn't really make sense. And so what we've said to ourselves was, hey, we think that there's we can either be everybody to everything and try to offer all of these different solutions, or and what we ended up deciding to do was say, hey, where do we think the puck is moving in the hockey game? And what we said was, we think in general the puck is moving towards brand selling direct. And so that maybe it will be 30-40% of the overall market on Amazon, but we think it's the fastest growing. If you look, Amazon 3P is growing much faster than Amazon 1P. And then in the Amazon 3P area, we don't have the data, but we think that in general, the market's moving from brands using retailers to sell their products on Amazon 3P to brands waking up and realizing that they need to own their Amazon presence and, quote, sell direct. And so how can we provide services to those brands that want to move there? And so how can we be in the fastest growing of the fastest growing area on Amazon? And how can we provide the brands the services that they need to be successful on that?
Yeah, we talk to a lot of brands, and there's definitely a desire for them, and maybe the economic climate, I think, might be helping to drive this as well. But removing the layers that exist between themselves and their customer, and I think years ago, unique brands mattered less on Amazon. And I personally think that's changing. I think customers want to buy from brands that they know and they trust. They're more intelligent than they used to be. And while I think Amazon in some ways creates such a frictionless buying experience, some people say, "Oh, brands don't matter." Right? It's the product, it's being there at the right time, it's the right price. And look, they all matter. All those things are important. But given two options, I think a consumer is going to buy from a brand they know and they trust rather than, um, an anonymous seller. And so I think I agree. I think there's an effort underway to remove as many of those layers between yourself and your customer, as possible.
Yeah, our pitch to most of the brand partners is by selling direct on Amazon. One, the money that was going to the middlemen is now going into your pocket. Two, you're now controlling the customer experience a lot more. And we always say, like, somebody needs to be owning your Amazon presence. And if you don't know who it is, it means nobody is. But make your Amazon pages and presence look and feel as much like your website as possible. Have great customer service versus some retailer type customer service, and then start getting to know and understand your data a lot better. And brands are waking up, especially when we may be heading into a recession and money matters. And what's happening is by selling direct, cutting out the middleman, our pitch to most of these brands is, hey, you're going to make 10 or 20% more margin. And that 10 or 20% more margin is going to go into your pocket or can be spent more on advertising and growing your business. And that's very attractive in tough economic times. And we also tell brands that, hey, if you're going to let somebody else make a lot of money off of you, that means you're going to be at a massive competitive disadvantage to your competitors who are selling direct. And so that's, brands are really waking up to that.
Yeah. And I think Amazon is recognizing the importance of brands and investing in tools and resources for those brands to be more visible on their platform. Again, all in an effort to help them be successful. Don't get me wrong, Amazon wants their piece of the pie as well. But when I hear about costs increasing on that side of the business, clearly people are saying, I got to take my own destiny into my own hands here. Do you think that's true for things like fulfillment as well?
Well, I feel Amazon is very easy to blame for everything. Yeah. And but if we take so what the headlines will read is Amazon has dramatically increased their cost for fulfillment by Amazon, or Amazon advertising costs have gone up a whole bunch. And so it's nice to blame Amazon, but at the same time, if we take a step back, like let's be honest with ourselves a little bit. Hey, we're now experiencing the fastest inflation that the United States has probably seen since 20, 30 years, and that we all realize that hey, if you go to the gas station, the gas prices are up, and that hey, yeah, Amazon has raised their fulfillment costs a little bit, but that's probably in line with inflation. And then if we actually look at, I mean, I come from the world of being an investment analyst. If you look at the profitability of Amazon's marketplace, it turns out it hardly makes any money, right? So Amazon, the company, makes almost all their money from Amazon Web Services, and that their retail business, which is what we buy our stuff on the Amazon.com website, is actually, barely profitable, if at all profitable. And so it's not like Amazon's using their monopolistic ability to make tons of money off of us. It's, I think that in reality what's happening is that costs are going up, and that Amazon needs to increase the cost. But the fulfillment costs are going up and ads costs are going up, but ads costs off Amazon are also going up, and fulfillment costs off Amazon are also going up. And so I always look at it and say, hey, does using Amazon fulfillment by Amazon, how does that compare to using some 3PL? And in almost 100% of the situations that we see is Amazon costs are actually much lower than doing it yourself. So, I mean, I always think that Amazon has the best logistics network and probably the best UPS contract in the world. And we can't compete against that, or most brands can't compete against them themselves. So we can complain about it, but also at the same time, I think what we all need to do is just raise our prices slightly, and nobody wants to do that. And so it's easier to blame Amazon for a lot of our problems.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with you. I mean, I think Amazon is an amazing company. I'm a big fan, and I believe that that at the end of the day, the overwhelming value that they are providing to consumers is so enormous that it's still the best game in town, right? There really isn't an alternative that's going to capture, almost half of every e-commerce dollar spent in the United States. And again, it's amazing. I still talk to brand owners who literally tell me that they don't sell on Amazon. With a straight face, they'll say that to me. And that's just not reality, right? If you go to the platform, their products are everywhere. So it's hard to ignore, and you might as well dominate it and partner with someone like Amify who knows what they're doing, because it is complex. It is a little bit difficult. There's a lot of moving parts, right?
Yeah, and I think the world is changing, and that brands are waking up to realizing that they need to be on Amazon. And the first thing is that you need to be where the customers are. And right now, 50% of the customers are going to Amazon. And so if you're not on Amazon, you're missing out on a huge number of potential new customers. The stat that I've always seen, which I think is true, is that over 80% of searches on Amazon are what are called non-branded searches, which are, I type in tennis shoes, I don't type in Nike. And so if you are not where the customer is, you are missing out on huge numbers of potential new customers. And then I think what you said is that at the end of the day, the customer experience on Amazon is so much better than the customer experience on most websites these days, that these brands are fighting an uphill battle, just saying that they're going to be website only. And I just use the example, which is there's a very well-known brand that I recently purchased some products on their website. It took them 11 days to deliver it to me. I could have bought them on Amazon and had it delivered in 1 day for the same price. And so at some point, these brands need to wake up and realize that, hey, if you're going to have this website only attitude, at least you need to have equal ability in customer service. And 11 days delivery time is just completely unacceptable in 2023.
I do think there is a fear for some brands that, even if they are 3P on Amazon and they have their own account and they're controlling, how their products are sold there, that once they venture into that, that they are potentially opening themselves up to, unauthorized distribution and other brand protection related problems. I don't agree with that. I think those problems are there probably even before they are. So like it or not, you're going to have to deal with some of those elements. But I think there's almost like this fear in some cases. I met with a huge brand recently. I mean, one of the biggest brands in the world, who actively tried to convince me that they don't sell on Amazon. And really what they meant was that they're not benefiting from the economic activity that's happening on Amazon and involves their brand. And it's because of this fear of sort of losing control, right, of that consumer experience. Even luxury brands, that I talk to that don't want to be on Amazon, they're there anyway. Your products are there. They're being sold, whether you want them to be sold there or not. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I mean, we get that often, which is the brand says they don't want to be on Amazon, and then you go to Amazon and their product is all over Amazon.
Right.
And so what we always, and I always say, like, if there's demand for your product, like, the market is going to find a way to deliver it for you. And so what we talk to brands about is, if you say you don't want to be on Amazon, but your product's on Amazon, that means you're on Amazon. And so then the question is, do you want to have your Amazon presence be controlled by a whole bunch of unauthorized gray market sellers giving, questionable quality, really a bad shopping experience? Who knows about prices? It could be MAP violated, or it could be overpriced. So do you want to have a good customer experience for your customers, or do you want to have a bad one? And so we always say, like, you want to give the customers what they want, and the customers want to buy on Amazon. And so instead of letting gray market sellers dominate your Amazon listings, do it correct. Like, have control, own it, and get the upside of it as well, right?
Is that part of what you think about, like, if you're going to take on a new client or even an existing client and you're helping them grow, I mean, how important is sort of channel control for them and for you, right, to be successful?
Yeah, so for us, brand protection is super important for the brands to understand why it's important. And so, uh, you know, the name of this is this podcast is Owning the Buy Box, right? And so, if you're a brand and you're going to try to sell your products direct to the end customer on Amazon, but you have gray market sellers who are violating price, well, that means you're doing all this work and getting none of the reward. That these gray market sellers are taking all of your business. And so what I think happens is that brands kind of fall into like probably three different categories when it comes to brand protection, which is one is they get it, they understand it, they're willing to invest in brand protection and make sure that it's a clean channel. The second group thinks that, oh, I'm going to hire somebody and they're going to clean it up for me, which is much more difficult than it sounds. And then the third group doesn't even understand the basics of it. But so for us, like understanding and saying like, hey, we always use like the pizza pie analogy, which is like your brand is going to sell X number of units on Amazon. You get to choose who sells those X units, right? So if your product's going to sell a million units a year, do you want those million units to be sold by you? If they're sold by you, you're going to have high margin. You're going to control the brand experience. You're going to do all these great things. Do you want them to be sold by authorized retailers who you care about, but probably aren't really helping your brand on Amazon very much? Or do you want to be sold by unauthorized sellers who you don't know? And if you allow those unauthorized sellers, they're probably they're making the reason why they're selling that product on Amazon is because they're making money off of you and you don't even know who they are. And so why are you letting people you don't know who they are make money? Now, I think the good thing for us is when we work with brands who sell direct, there's an economic incentive for them to clean up their unauthorized sellers. Whereas if you're a retailer, there's not really much of an economic incentive. And what I mean by that is when you're selling direct on Amazon, you make that retailer margin that was historically going to retailers. And so that's more money in your pocket. And if you're letting kind of holes in the bucket go to unauthorized sellers, it means that the money that should be going to you is going to somebody else.
Well, and I think partly, and I know exactly what you mean because we deal with this a lot too, and we'll talk to brands that sell through retail channels, and they look at this problem and they say, "Well, we've already been paid for that product. Like it's not counterfeit, right? If they're confident that their counterfeits is different, right? That's a whole different problem that you would assume most brands are going to have obviously zero tolerance for." But gray market product, they look at that and say, well, we've been paid for that. But
right.
The piece of the puzzle that they're missing is that I think being successful on Amazon means building this cohesive ecosystem where these elements work together. And so, for instance, if people are coming in and they're undercutting your price significantly, right, that's going to drive price matching, which is going to drive a reduction in margins across the board. Right? If you lose the buy box, you can't run marketing. There are impacts to not policing your channel, whether you're selling direct or you're selling, through retail partners, and they don't think about that. And so I think part of it is educating them that irrespective of the model, there is significant benefit in trying to control the channel and the way that your products are sold.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally the issue is that it's very hard for brands to turn down a purchase order.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And so what's happened is if someone comes and says, "Hey, I want to buy, a huge amount of inventory from you." Well, it's very easy for brands to look the other way and say, "Oh, well, I need to make this, this sale to hit my quarterly numbers," or something like that. But what they're doing is they're building, or they're getting themselves deeper and deeper into the slog of trying to get out of unauthorized sellers. And we always try to go back to the point of like this is a fixed pie on Amazon, right? Which you're going to sell 1 million units no matter if you had one seller, or you're going to sell 1 million units if you had 100 sellers. And so operationally, like, isn't it a lot easier to deal with one person, hopefully you, than 100 unauthorized people, or 100 authorized retailers? And so then the other thing they do is they view brand protection as a cost, right? So as you said, if you're doing this as a retailer, well, you're selling to if you're a manufacturer, you're selling to a retailer. Usually the retailer then wants the brand to spend the money cleaning up the channel. And so what the brand then says is, well, what can I do this as the lowest cost? And they go out and get I'd call a low quality, low cost brand protection company to work on this, which is never works, because for this to really be cleanup, you need to have buy-in from the brand. And getting buy-in from the brand means, hey, we're willing to cut off an unauthorized retailer. We're willing to cut off a distributor that we know is selling into the gray markets. Knowing that, hey, again, the fixed pie concept is you're going to sell the same number of units no matter how many people you're selling. And the question just is, who do you want to be selling those units?
I agree. It's tough choices. People are going to, you're going to have to make some difficult decisions probably in the near term to get that long-term benefit, right, of the increased margin and the cleaner channel and the economic benefits that come with that. I agree. That's the most difficult thing that we hear from brands.
Yeah, and the way I always say it is like, hey, would you rather be making a retailer margin or a wholesale margin? So putting that into perspective, like, let's say you sell a $100 product on Amazon. If you're selling it as a wholesaler, maybe you would get $50, but if you sold it yourself direct to the end customer, you'd get $70 after all Amazon fees. And so we say, hey, would you rather get $50 or $70? And then they would say, of course, we want $70. And then we say, okay, great. And then are you willing to pay an extra dollar cost to get a really good brand protection company to help you? Hopefully they say yes, because then they go back and say, oh, well, I'm still getting $69 instead of $50.
You already know your success relies on your Amazon sales growth, and that means beating counterfeiters and illicit sellers to the buy box. But do you have all the tools you need to do so effectively? IP Secure offers seller intelligence to understand and root out unauthorized sellers and push them out of the buy box through simple enforcement actions that actually work, meaning customers will only see your legitimate products and shop from your authorized sellers. Learn how at ipsecure.com.
I agree with you completely. It's all cost benefit that needs to be spelled out and explained. And I think the X factor you mentioned is, can you get good help, at a cost that fits into your model appropriately? And I agree with you. If you don't look at your own foundation, your own agreements, how you sell and who you sell to, then you're just playing whack-a-mole. Right? Then you're not really treating the root cause of the gray market problem. You're just, you're treating the symptoms, and that's helpful, probably, at least superficially, but it will not long term have a significant impact. I think back in 2021, you wrote an article for Forbes, which I read, which talked about why Amazon's crackdown on fraudulent sellers was good for everyone. And I think you wrote it around the time that Amazon shut down a bunch of these Chinese brands that had all these fake reviews. And just out of curiosity, I mean, do you feel like fake reviews is still a big problem? Obviously, if you're an unauthorized seller, it's a great way to get credibility. Just curious what your perspective is that, today, obviously, a couple of years after you wrote the article.
Yeah, well, let's take a step back before that. So what was happening on Amazon was that this is probably, it really started ramping around 2015, 2016, which is, you could create a new brand. So me and you in our townhouse or whatever could create a new brand. We could source product. We could then create a product listing. And then what we would do is effectively trick the Amazon algorithm by getting fake reviews or getting fake orders. And there was a lot of talk about how you could go onto Facebook and give 90% discounts for products to get fake orders to then kind of juice the Amazon results. And that allowed some of these brands, basically unheard of brands, they were only on Amazon. The product was no good, but they would get thousands of fake reviews. And so the next thing you knew, it looked like it was the best product on the Amazon marketplace. And it made it really, really hard for brands who were, quote, following the Amazon rules to be successful. And so, yeah, about 2 years ago, Amazon really started cracking down on fake reviews and these basically fake orders. And we've seen a really big difference, right? Which it's the amount and number of obviously fraudulent companies has declined pretty dramatically. I mean, I think Amazon was quoted as shutting off over $1 billion worth of GMV from these unauthorized sellers and thousands of fake seller accounts or unauthorized seller accounts. And so that that's been a great movement in the right direction. At the same time, it always amazes me. The Amazon marketplace is always changing, and so these unauthorized and crooks, if you will, the cheaters, are always one step ahead of Amazon in some ways, right? So Amazon has now shut down the ability to get fake reviews, and that's helped out dramatically. But these unauthorized tactics, move to more kind of ingenious stuff, and now that there's a lot of the big thing now is merging different product listings to get boost results. So just using an example, like you could take like the listing of a 10-year-old iPhone that no longer is sold anymore, but has 10,000 good reviews. You could merge that with a brand new listing that you're launched, and all of a sudden your brand new product has 10,000 positive reviews on it. Now the product's completely different. But I think the good news here is like Amazon's moving in the right direction. It's making it more and more difficult to be a cheater, which therefore makes it much easier for existing established brands to be successful on Amazon because you're not competing against these unauthorized sellers. I always say it's kind of like steroids, right? Which is like, hey, if you're a bike rider and you take steroids, you're going to outcompete the competition. And when all of a sudden you can't use the steroids anymore, it's the best people actually rise to the top, which are usually established brands that have a product that's a lot better than some startup, 3 people in a townhouse.
Yeah. It's an interesting topic for me, reviews, because they're so critical to the consumer experience. Like, I don't think I've ever bought anything off Amazon and didn't look at the reviews first. And so we know it's really critical to the buying decisions that consumers are making, in some ways more than the content. The reviews are just critical. My wife last year, she got 2 different packages with the seeds. The brushing they call it brushing, right? When you basically they're basically just shipping out nonsense so they could generate a UPS delivery confirmation, and that would enable them to say that a product was sold. And it was weird. She was getting like weird packages that were showing up at the house. And to your point, just recently we helped a client deal with a listing that got merged, and they basically said the bad guy said that their product was a variation, right, of the client's product, and so they immediately, all the reviews were showing up, and it's pretty crazy. It's pretty confusing for consumers.
I mean, the thing I would just say is that Amazon's market is $800 billion. It's a massive market, which means there's massive opportunity, and there's amazing entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs can either put all that creative energy into doing legal things, but I think it's almost fascinating about what some of the crazy things that people can come up with to cheat the system. And that's just one example of hey, it is so, what it basically was saying, it is so valuable to get fake orders, that the shipping all this stuff and doing all this exercise is so valuable to get higher on those Amazon listings that they're willing to almost do anything to do it.
Oh yeah. I mean, when there's that much money available and there's that much consumer demand concentrated in one place, it's inevitable, right? That bad guys are going to try to, no matter what you do, I mean, they're going to keep coming at us relentlessly. But again, I applaud Amazon. Nobody is doing more than they are, spending between, I think, 500 million and $1 billion a year. At least that's what they claim publicly, from people, resources, groups, tools, analysis, proactive. Now they're doing litigation with brands. There's very little that they aren't trying to do. And so when I get in a room with a brand and they are, sort of complaining about Amazon on a consistent basis, I say, well, show me another platform that's doing even, 1/10 of what Amazon is doing to help kind of control some of these issues. Sometimes it takes them a little while to get there, but they get there, and so they deserve credit for that, significant credit. I don't know if you've been following in the news recently, but when Congress passed the omnibus spending bill a couple weeks ago, included in that was something called the Informed Consumers Act, and this was something that's been bouncing around Congress for a couple of years, and they finally got a good chunk of it inserted into that spending bill. So it's law now, and it will literally be a crime for certain sellers to lie about certain information, and they're going to have to be able to produce data that proves they are who they say they are, and validate lots of stuff. And I'm kind of excited about it. I think this could have an actual positive impact for you and for your clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think Amazon has always had this delicate balance, right? Which is, at the end of the day, Amazon cares most about their customers. And so historically, Amazon didn't want to give a lot of data about who was selling the products. And the reason why they didn't want to give a lot of data about who was selling the products is that they wanted to enable gray market sellers to sell at prices that were the lowest prices on earth, which usually violated the brand's pricing requirements. And so for a long, long time, it was in Amazon's best interest to hide the identities of the sellers. Then sometime about 3 or 4 years ago, I think Amazon's attitude changed, which was a lot of gray market sellers were starting to do bad things that were hurting the Amazon ecosystem and hurting customer trust. And so you could say it was very easy to send in counterfeit product. It was very easy to send in used product and kind of get it commingled with other people's inventory. And so Amazon kind of woke up 3 or 4 years ago and said, hey, we actually want the customer to be confident in who they're buying from. So let's start showing information about who they're buying from, and so that if they do get a counterfeit product or have an issue, that customer can be held accountable. And that's the first step in the right direction. And I think Amazon is aware of this, and that these new bills are moving in the direction of, hey, let's make this a cleaner, fairer marketplace for everybody.
Well, and that's why I think Amazon inevitably came out in support of the legislation, was because there's only so much they can do on their own, right? And I think now that there is actual laws in place to assist in the process of hopefully keeping bad guys out of the Amazon ecosystem, there's real consequences all of a sudden. State attorney generals can enforce these laws with real penalties like prison. So, I mean, I don't know if they will, but that's in the language. So that's new, right? That's not something that's ever been available to Amazon or brands or companies like Amify. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. It's a little scary when government starts getting involved because, things can go sideways. They love to take control, and sometimes they take too much, but it's going to help. And I agree. It's for 20 years, I ran a different company, and, we would monitor marketplaces very actively, hundreds of them. And I've seen dozens come and go here in the US too, like sell.com and, like hundreds of these different platforms that were third-party marketplaces, and they're gone. They're essentially all gone. And the reason I think a big part of it is because they didn't accept that transparency and visibility into these issues was really the long-term strategy to make them legitimate places for consumers to buy. So I agree. I think Amazon woke up a while back and said, look, this is not going to get better unless we shine a big bright light on it, and collectively as a community, try to get rid of it. For Amify in particular, I know a little bit about your business. We work with and talk to agencies and brand owners and aggregators, and I think some are really, really good at content or advertising. Are there particular areas where Amify really shines in your view, Ethan? And what are those?
Yeah. So, why I created Amify, or what we are now, is we help premium quality direct-to-consumer brands win on Amazon. And so if we break that down, what does that mean for us? It's there are so many brands who are selling millions of dollars of products on Amazon. They realize they have a huge opportunity. They also realize they don't know how to do it themselves, and they don't have the internal capabilities. And so what we said was, let's become a brand's chief Amazon officer. And we will basically be your outsourced Amazon strategy, but then also executional partner. And so the problem with running a brand on Amazon is it's pretty complicated, right? You need to have an Amazon strategy, you need to have a content strategy, you need to have an inventory strategy, you need to have a supply chain strategy, you need to have advertising strategy, all these different things. And that takes, for most brands, 5 or 6 people doing slightly different things and a lot of individualized skill sets. And so we said, how can we do this basically on an outsourced basis that's twice as good and half the cost of a brand doing it themselves? And so that's why we said we're going to focus on one thing, which is helping premium quality direct-to-consumer brands. And so hopefully if we do one thing, we can do it better than everybody else. The second thing I said is we're going to be the high quality provider. And so, if you are a small little brand that's selling less than $1 million, you can't really afford to invest a lot in your Amazon channel. But if you're a brand doing 5 or 10 million, the question now, we would be a small fraction of your overall revenue. And so the question is, how can you have a high quality team that can really take a brand from $5 million to $20 million? And that's a different skill set than taking a brand from $200,000 to $500,000 on Amazon. So, we staff with high quality and director level employees for real brands that really want to grow. The third thing we really differentiate ourselves on is we're a complete solution provider, right? And so most of our competition would just do ads, or maybe they do content. Our whole thing is like, hey, our goal is that you would never have to log into Amazon Seller Central if you're a brand. And so that you would know that your Amazon's taken care of. We will do all of your Amazon strategy. We'll do all of your content. We'll do all of your advertising. We'll do all of your supply chain. We'll do all of your logistics. We'll do all of your customer service. We'll do all of your warehousing and returns management, all under one company roof. And so we make it easy for brands to be successful so that they can move fast and focus on making great products rather than figuring out how dealing with some case that Amazon has sent them.
Yeah.
And
so you're basically an extension of my team.
Correct. Yeah. And we work with some of the the largest direct to consumer brands that probably you get Facebook ads for. And so we said, hey, again, if we can focus on one thing, hopefully we can be better than everybody else who claims to do everything for them. So those are like our top 3 or 4 differentiators.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like what you said about the skill sets required to get you from 5 million to 20 million are very different than the skill sets that I'm sure you need to go from, a couple 100,000, right, to 5 million. And do you find that when you are engaging a client who's reached that $5-6 million mark and they're now ready to kind of take that next step, that you have to undo a lot of the things that they were doing? Or is it like pour gasoline on it and let's just do more of what's been working? Or is it like totally different techniques that you think are required, just generally?
Normally what happens is when clients come to us is that they realize that their internal capabilities or their partner that they've been using, they've outgrown. And that I always say there's like the doing phase, which it's, hey, you can hire me to do your content. You can hire me to do your advertising. But once you get to a certain level, you need to hire someone to do your strategy and your advertising, your content, and all these things together. And so most of the time people come to us as they've outgrown their existing partner and they realize that they need, there's like, I think the common book, which is what got me here won't get you there. And so when they come to us, usually it's, they have B quality everything and they need to go to A quality everything. And so it's, they have B quality merchandising, which means they probably have too many SKUs. It's not focused enough. We always say on Amazon, it's better to have a small number of SKUs that perform really well than your entire catalog that doesn't perform well. So focus on what matters. They're probably spending a lot of money on advertising that's not very effective, right? And so we're always shocked by how many brands will spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars on advertising, yet expect, some small partner or some, a single person to that they're paying several $1,000s a month to manage that $1 million budget. Like naturally, that's not going to go very well. And so we would say like, hey, how do we slow down? How do we like become more cost effective? How do we increase profitability for a lot of these brands? And so across the board, right? So it's your overall Amazon strategy, your advertising, your strategy, your content strategy, your supply chain strategy, your merchandising strategy, your financial profile. Like, how can you take all those things from a B level to an A level and really start that flywheel effect working, right? Because it's sort of multiplicative, right? Which is, hey, is the reason why your brand not doing very well because you have a low conversion rate, low price, or wrong price point, out of stocks a lot? Like, let's start solving these products and those problems, and that starts getting everything working so that your seller ranks can go up.
It's really that. It's not like, there's secret tactics. There's a level of experience that needs to look at the operation from a strategic perspective and begin to make adjustments, right, to what's happening. And I love what you said about like less is more, right? Like focus on profitability and increasing margins. And sometimes that means like actually reducing your catalog on Amazon, not increasing your catalog, which may seem counterintuitive, right, to some brands.
Oh, totally. Or, what we always say is like content is probably the thing that most brands don't understand, again, which is they'll spend $1 million on advertising, but then have a product page that looks terrible. And they'll say, hey, spending a couple $1,000s to get the content up to world class is too expensive. And I always say, hey, if we can increase your conversion rate by 1 or 2 percentage points by putting the world class content on there, then geez, like that lowers your advertising spend by 10x that or 20x that. And so a lot of that strategy stuff, again, is how do you move from hiring people to do stuff for you versus how do you hire people to think for you and put themselves in put them in your brand shoes on how to improve sales, but also profitability.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to grow up. And if you want to get up to that, 10, 20, $30 million mark, you need to start thinking a little bit more. I think I liked how you phrased it before. You got to stop just doing, and you got to really start understanding the strategic purpose behind what you're doing. And you can work smarter, not harder.
And the other way to put it about it is like, think about yourself if you're hiring an employee. Like what so many brands do would be hire the intern to be their Amazon person.
Right. Yeah.
And, so it's like, wait, you're putting the fastest growing e-commerce channel in the hands of your most junior person. Well, at some point you would then hire a mid-level person to do that. But at some point you need to hire a director level person to do any task. And it could be Amazon, your website, or whatever it may be. But just understand that, like, if you hire the intern to be your Amazon person, they're probably not going to be the same quality and they get the same results as hiring a director level person with 10 years of experience.
I think people don't understand the significance of what's really happening. I feel that way about brand protection all the time because I meet with brands and they will have a legal person or even an outside counsel sort of like dealing with their brand protection issues, and that individual has little to no understanding of how the Amazon ecosystem works. And I think that's a big mistake. I think you need legal advice. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you don't want to make a mistake when you're trying to protect your brand or your sales channel, but to ask a legal person to lead the effort of protecting your revenue, which is really what you care about in a complex e-commerce ecosystem like Amazon, I think is a mistake because they don't understand how it works.
Well, right. And so, I mean, I think what happens is these brands hire brand protection companies and they think they're just you're going to solve the problem, right? And in reality, you need a partnership, right? Which it's, we've dealt and made millions of mistakes in our past, but like the number of brands who would refuse to put a no selling on Amazon policy into their dealer account, their dealer contracts, yet expect magically brands to, or resale partners to not sell on Amazon. Well, no, it's not even in your contract. So you have to like do stuff. This is a partnership. And it's the devil's in the details, and it's not as easy. And I'd like to be able to say to all brands like, hey, launch on Amazon, you're going to sell millions of dollars and make millions of dollars in profit. But this is a competitive marketplace. Everything's 10 times more difficult than it appears to be on the outside. And brand protection is one of those things, which is, hey, you have to put a foundation in place. You have to spend money and invest in it to get the returns.
Like everything else on Amazon, you can't go in halfway.
Correct. Yeah. 10 years ago, this was, you'd Field of Dreams, which is you put your product on Amazon and then all of a sudden the customers would come and you'd be selling tons of product. The cost of doing business on Amazon or the cost of entry on Amazon have gone up dramatically. And the upside has gone up dramatically, but so has like the minimum entry costs. And brand protection is one that, hey, it doesn't make any sense to have a great product and that all these gray market sellers, dominate the listings for it.
Yeah. So I also read, just to kind of change gears a little bit, that you recently left the CEO role at the company. I know you're the founder, you're the executive chairman. How did that feel? How was that transition for you? I mean, as a CEO myself, I could tell you I would have a difficult time releasing the my OCD control over what happens. But I'm just curious how you feel about that transition.
So I started the business 11 years ago. We built it up. We have around 80 employees or so. And what happens is as the business grows, like the role of the founder CEO changes dramatically, right? And so like the early times, it was really kind of getting your hands dirty, talking with brands, talking with clients, trying to figure out that product market fit. And then once we found product market fit, the business started growing pretty dramatically. And then my role kind of switched away from talking with brands and becoming much more talking with investors, talking with finance people, talking with HR. And so, after 11 years, I think you become humble enough to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. And my wife and I recently had our first baby. We have a baby girl. Who's
congratulations.
A little over a year old now. And so, I kind of said, which was like, hey, after 11 years, you kind of don't have as much to prove as you did when you were a small little business. And it really came to, what do I enjoy doing? What are my like unique abilities? What am I, quote, best in the world at, kind of thing. And for me, that was kind of going back to the roots, which was talking to clients, talking to potential brands, helping them think through their Amazon strategy. And I just enjoy it so much more. And that's what I'm good at. And so my stress level's down a whole bunch. I think, the company's doing better than ever. Sometimes, getting out of your own way really matters. And luckily we have a great team of people that we promoted 2 internal people to be chief executive officer and chief operating officer, and they've just been doing a fabulous job and way better than I could ever have done it. So that I'm like, wait, I get to be more happy and the business gets to be more successful. That sounds like a great trade-off.
That's a good deal. Well, it's also a byproduct of the good decisions you made along the way, right? Adding those, I really feel like good quality people make all the difference. And it sounds like, you've got a great team. And so stepping away was easier, I would imagine, when you feel a lot of confidence in the team that you've assembled and the people that are going to continue on. It sounds like you're going to remain, part of the business, but are lucky enough to have a great team, right? That can take over a lot of those day-to-day duties for you. That's awesome. So what's next for you, Ethan? Any idea?
Well, I'm spending a lot more time with my daughter than I was when I was CEO, which is the most important thing. But, I'm still working the company full time and plan on doing that for as long as I can think of here. I think we're still in the early innings of Amazon in many ways. E-commerce is 20% of total retail. It still means we have 80% to go. Brands are really still trying to figure out how they should be doing this. I just continue to think that while e-commerce is 20, 30 years old now, we're still kind of at that inflection point where we can go from 20% of e-commerce penetration to 40%, and Amazon I continue to think is going to take market share. And soon we're going to have the point where deliveries are going to be 1 hour deliveries for almost everything we have. And when that day happens, only Amazon is going to be able to deliver that. And why would I ever go to a store when I can order on Amazon and have it delivered faster than me going to the store down the street?
Well, and I think Amazon is super focused on investing in areas of our lives where we are making other types of purchasing decisions, whether that's healthcare, whether that's logistics. There's all sorts of other businesses that Amazon is a part of, and I think people don't think about that. But it's not a secret, right, that Amazon wants you to sort of get as many things in your life as you need through them as possible. So they're going to continue to find ways to do that. I think it's really exciting. If brands want to work with Amify, what is the best way for them? Could they reach out to the company? Should they go to the website? What are your thoughts on how they could reach out to Amify?
Yeah, anybody can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. My name is Ethan McAfee. Obviously, my LinkedIn profile is there. Feel free to connect there. Or if you want, you can go to goamify.com, which is GOAMIFY.com. There's a contact us button, which usually then ends up being routed to me or some of my partners, and we can happily talk with you about that.
That's great, Ethan. That's all the time that we have for today, but I just want to thank you for sharing. I think you've got an amazing company. You're a super interesting guy. I'm excited to see what you do in the future as well. And so, thanks for coming on and sharing your perspective. I'm sure, brands and sellers that tune in are going to find it really helpful and interesting. So thanks for your time today.
Great. Hey, thanks, Dave. I really appreciate the time as well. It's fun talking with you.
And if anybody needs to follow us, again, it's Owning the Buy Box. You can find us on Spotify, Google, Apple, anywhere you go and listen to podcasts, we can be found. Thanks for listening, and everyone have a great day.
You've been listening to Owning the Buy Box, a show from IP Secure. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share episodes that you love. That helps us keep delivering you the tools you need to sharpen your competitive edge and ensure your authorized sellers always own the buy box. We'll see you next time.